Hey everyone, welcome back to the Shift with Elena Agar podcast. In today's episode, we dive in with Patricia Boulogne, who's sharing some of her eye-opening insights on tackling those hidden health issues and self-sabotaging habits that hold us back. From detox tips to emotional healing, you won't want to miss this one. Tune in and get ready to transform your wellness game. As you know, I've been really deep into the wellness game in the last few years of my life, and I keep chatting with people about these topics, and every time it's just an insightful conversation. And so I want to share those with you. And as always, subscribe, share, comment, and let me know what you think. Dr. Pat, welcome to the Shift podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm here, incredibly happy to be here.
I'm excited to chat with you. I've really been getting deeper into kind of optimal health and functional medicine and really just kind of understanding how can we be at our top best aside from just a regular, life and health. Like, is there something more to health and just overall wellness to us as individuals? And so you have a wealth of experience in this field. So, but before we dive into the deep end into these discussions, tell me a little bit about your career story, because there's a lot that you've done in your life. So give me a little bit of a snapshot, and from our audience, kind of where do you come from? What's your background? And why is this topic in particular so important to you that you want to talk about it?
Well, my background starts like I'm originally from the Midwest. I think I told you that, and when we first chatted, and being from the Midwest, you have this very embracing um, situation. Everyone helps everybody, and I've always had that as a core piece of my who I am, and I've taken it with me through my whole life. I was fortunate to have my father, who was very inquisitive and also was very promoting for me to like go out and explore and do things. So my background has always been in science, and and I used to do these experiments. When I was 9 years old, I made an acid-base indicator system, and my teacher thought it was so interesting that he submitted it to the state, and I came in second place in the state for innovation. And it was just, I just used plastic pickle jars, that were sterilized for my project and took the labels off. But I just thought it was very interesting, and so my background for the science base has always been there, and through school and through college. And when I went to college, I had the experience of having some really great teachers, and also just falling in love with science, and even the more in studying and doing pre-med. And I've always had this really inclination to play doctor, never the nurse, never the injured, because I wanted to go out and save the world even as a kid. And so all those steps kept on like adding to one another, and none of them seemed to at that time seem so much interrelated. But looking back, in hindsight is 2020, right? You can see how each one of those steps in getting to where I wanted to go to be a physician and being able to help people and sick people to get well and well people to maintain their wellness as an alternative doctor, it was paramount to, go through each one of those phases of my life, and seeing like, wow, that doesn't work. I used to work at the University of Michigan Hospital for an independent study. And when I was there, I just never saw anybody really get well. The only people who were happy were people in the maternity ward. And kept on saying, why is that? Why did this person get sick and that person didn't? I mean, that's always been in the back of my mind, and how I've approached my ability in science to progress. And when I was in chiropractic school in Atlanta, Georgia, I had some really great mentors that were, they plant seeds and walked away, and then I had a really great class, and we did a lot of camaraderie and that. And most of my friends and colleagues from then were all still connected on a very, like good level. So, and each one of us has done something interesting, different, but, because everybody didn't like nutrition, but I love nutrition. And so my teacher, what I had in chiropractic school, was really a catalyst to like really push me to go find out more. Like why is that? What is that? And then I had other mentors in chiropractic that I was able to apply that learning to people and situations, and ultimately write books, and also motivating people to understand and do more, because many people are sick and they don't know it.
Hmm. So so many questions. One, how do we find out if we're really sick or it's just how we feel? Because I feel like there's
Well,
that as well, Some
you
people are
know,
like, this is how
I
I
have a
am.
I
Mm.
have a 72-hour window or something. When I had patients, I used to tell them if something came up and it's still there, and after 48 hours, they should pay attention to it. And then by 72 hours, they should already be on my table in my room, so that I can take a look at them and give them an opinion. Because I did other techniques besides just chiropractic, um, in the adjustment aspect of it. But how I analyzed was very, I learned that from different mentors of that also. But how people know, I think if they're sick, a lot of people don't pay attention to signs and symptoms. They pay attention to, like, how do I feel now? And they take based upon how they feel as if that's health, but that's not real health, because nobody knows if the organ systems in their body are functioning at 100%. Nobody knows that, but you do know, you have biomarkers. You have now, like, testing for DNA to see where you might have DNA glitches, as if you could actually correct them. You can do things in the epigenetic way to avoid, exciting that gene to play out its life. But the things that you have to do with that all start from basic things like eating better, thinking better, moving better, doing better, in that realm. So when someone doesn't feel good for a couple days, I think it's, I call in my book, I call that Grim Reaper syndrome, because, well, a lot of times we'll say like, oh, it'll go away. And then you realize 6 months later, if you really analyze it, that where you're at 6 months before that, when you had that phrase like, I'm not feeling good and it's just me. A lot of those just me people have a tendency to ask the wrong person if they've had the same signs and symptoms. So if it's somebody in your family and your family all eats the same way and also does the same activities, then you're not going to really know. I can remember somebody telling me that their mother told them, oh, I had that when I was 40. It goes
Mm.
away. But at 50, she still had the problem.
Mm.
And a lot of things have changed also too, from the quality and quantities of foods that people eat. Like look at the large sizing of, a lot of drinks and a lot of fast foods in the United States. You don't see the same size in Europe. And you also don't see the same ingredients in those same foods in Europe as you do here, because they're banned. And so when people start to, when they eat something one time and they don't feel good, well, maybe okay. Maybe like when you start having that same repetitious feeling, it really is a huge red flag that you needed to pay attention to, not only that your mindset, but you also have to pay attention to what you're doing, when what you're putting in your mouth, because that you have control over,
Mm.
in the water that you drink. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of problems with the water, especially in the United States, from runoff of chemicals and from farming and what people spray, on their own garden. The list goes on. That could be a whole nother podcast,
Yeah.
just in and of itself. But but I think that people, just like, I think when you don't feel good, you need to listen to your body. And if it doesn't, and my rule is 72 hours.
Mm.
And so with 72 hours, you have to think like, maybe something else is going on here that I don't know about, or that I don't wear, because a lot of people, you're in the United States, you're not taught about health. You're talking, you're healthy until you actually have symptoms that interfere with how you want to do your life. And then you're in a crisis. So why would you want to wait to be in a crisis? There's things that you can do now that actually foster, healthier living. And in a good way, and like in eating, from the foods that you eat, the water you drink, the air that you breathe, the chemicals that you use in your house. Those are the ways that people get sick, from,
Mm.
perpetual exposure to the same thing. That's not good for you.
Mm. I like this notion of the 72 hours because what often happens is we'll go to the doctor and they'll be like, oh, take ibuprofen for a couple of weeks and see if it goes away. And it's like, well, of course it's going to go away because you numbed down the pain, but you
Mhm.
didn't get rid of the problem, which is why in my own life and my own health journey, I've discovered like integrative medicine and holistic approach and, and bioenergetics and all those things
Mhm.
to really understand how can my body be at top performance. And to your point earlier, you don't know what's happening inside your body, so you might be sick and not even realizing because up here you feel fine maybe to an extent, but it's like you have to really go deeper into testing and these kind of things because now we have access to it to really find out if there's something underlying that could be brewing. And I
Well,
think,
right. And I harp on food. So, I offer my clients a food sensitivity test of over 200 foods, that they can see foods that they should never put in their mouth in their entire life because it sets off their immune system.
mm,
you know and there's and then there's other foods that that you can eat, and there's also in that program that I have, it's just I have a laboratory assistant who works with me from the lab that I do that with, who coaches my clients of how to create recipes around the foods that they can eat.
mm,
So it's fun. So you don't feel like you're punishing yourself, that kind of thing. But there are some foods. I mean, if I knew that some food was like destroying my gut, and making my intestines bleed, I don't care how much I like it, I wouldn't eat it.
yeah.
Especially if I had children and that was my why, I had a husband, I had family, and that type of thing. I definitely wouldn't eat it because every time you do, you're just like igniting that whole, piece all over again.
mm.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and other I know that some of it you don't feel, at least not when you're young, and I think it starts to kind of manifest in your 40s and 50s for a lot of people because then your body has just worn out from all the toxins or all the food that you're super sensitive to, right? No,
Yeah.
no, am I wrong?
No, it's like the accumulatory effect.
Oh
So by
yeah.
the time, like if you ate something bad one time, that you had like, you drink tap water that has atrazine and a neurotoxin in it. If you had a glass of water like that, we all have had more than one glass of water,
Yeah.
in the United States from the tap water. But, if you had that, and if you had like, that one time, then you can say like your body has the ability to deal with those toxins. But when your body gets overwhelmed with toxic load, it doesn't have very many places to store it. You think it's going to end up in the toilet, but at some point in time, because of the how the body works, it no longer has that ability. And there's so many toxins that the liver starts to get overwhelmed. So it takes those toxins when they are presenting themselves, because where it stores them at is blood, brain, bone, and fat. So, we know about Alzheimer's, we know about, people who, have insulin resistance because their fat cells can't process the glucose. They can't process and fat cells always are a good place to put a toxin because it's pretty encapsulated.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have that, in the bone part of it, bone's a great place to hide things too. So for the body. So when it does that, you have, this pool, of all these toxins in your system that don't have a place to go. And it will always go to your weakest link. So when you first start having, issues, it's usually with the fatty tissue organ.
Mm-hmm.
For women, it's breast, that's a fatty tissue, or the ovaries or the uterus, that's fatty tissue. For Alzheimer, it's the brain, same thing. And you also have, you have the omentum around the gut, which is the omentum is like fats that's around the visceral organs called VAT fat, and then the omentum is kind of like a cushion, because the omentum is there to protect your organs. So if you ever had, I used to play with boys my whole life growing up, and so I did get sucker punched a couple of times. I'm so glad that I had that momentum there to protect my organs, or else I would have been in the hospital, and I could have easily had internal bleeding, but it's there for a purpose, but also your body needs to be able to process those toxins. And I talk to detox quite frequently, just simple detox procedures, because we all have even exposure to lead. I mean, like when a kid is exposed to mercury or lead, it isn't one exposure that gets you, But you can see, like in an x-ray, for instance, when somebody has mercury poisoning, you can see in the top part of the bones, these lines that are going straight across,
Mm,
which indicate the residue, because that's where it puts it, but you have to have the system working. So you're process the foods that you eat and get the nutrients that you need when you need to get them along the intestinal tract. It's not just a tube that you go in
mm,
and go out. There's certain places that enzymes are needed to break down certain foods and that such. So, and then that gets in the blood system and goes to the liver, and that whole process keeps on repeating again and again. So, when you feel it isn't just one exposure. And so you say 40 years old, and I think it's interesting because that's when I used to see it go, men always going like, I'm great. At 40, they start going like, I just can't run that mile like I used to,
mm-hmm.
and I now have back pain that I never had before, and it's just like people become more sedentary, they don't have that motion. I mean, there's a whole list of things that we could go into, but I love that you mentioned that age, because that's the age, even for women, that,
Mm,
that women have usually get their gallbladder taken out is usually around the age of 40. It's just so there's just things that we can do to up our system, like the saying that JFK used to say about all rising tides lift all boats. It does, as long as the boat doesn't have a hole.
yeah.
That's right.
Why, after you mentioned the gallbladder, why most women have it, you said women have it taken out?
Women have a tendency to have gallbladder surgery around the age of 40.
Mm,
That's and so there's some, I can't remember the mnemonic for it right now, but there's like some mnemonic that it's like women 40 overweight. That's what the gallbladder does, is the gallbladder emulsifies fats. And so if you eat like a non-fat diet, like remember the diet that people used to eat, you got to eat carbohydrates, don't eat fat. Well, that created more havoc for people and their health than anything. It created more cardiovascular disease, and the list goes on. So, but women, it's an interesting thing. And I'm a Chinese medicine physician also. And so when I studied Chinese medicine, the 2 points in the back, there's they're bladder points along the bladder meridian, but they're right by the spine. And where the points are at along the spine that help the liver and the gallbladder work even better is exactly where the bra strap goes across.
mm,
Exactly. I just think, is there a relationship to that? And just thinking. And a lot of women don't have really good diets either. But when you don't emulsify fats, then you can't handle carbohydrates. And if you can't handle fats and can't handle carbohydrates, it gets stored it creates a situation where you gain weight. So
mm,
having a gallbladder, and you can push a gallbladder to work better just by doing something simple. Here's a pro tip. Drink lemon juice. Drink like an ounce of lemon juice to like 4 ounces of water, in the morning, because it will help the stomach maintain a specific pH balance, because it likes a certain level of pH. And then the lemon also helps the liver do its job, and also the gallbladder to emulsify fats. It's a very cleansing
mm,
type of juice, and only like lemon juice, not orange juice or any of
right.
its other brothers and sisters.
That's very interesting. That's really practical that I think a lot of people can apply. I'm curious also, are there any other signs or symptoms that people might kind of brush off, but those are pretty like, that you've seen in your experience, like if, majority of people have these symptoms, it usually ends up in this. Like, is there anything that you can think of?
I have had people have emotional issues a lot of
Mm,
times that come from traumas that or emotional issues that come from somewhere, their childhood, teenage, whatever, that they have that manifest. They go deep instead of, because some people absorb, those kind of people, pretty much empaths, generally speaking, absorb everything that's going on around them. And instead of being able to process it so they can make that, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's process that so that you can put it in a safe place, People have a tendency to have a emotional trauma and then store it someplace in their body. And when they store that one thing in their body, it's just like anything that represents that or similar to that same kind of feeling gets your mind, your mammalian brain says, oh, I recognize that, and then I need to do something with it.
Mm.
And then, it gets, subdued and it gets pushed in to a certain part of your body. So I can give you a live instance of this. In about a year and a half ago, I was working an event for a group of Hollywood people that were in Miami. And there was a woman who was there who was really edgy. And so when I went up to give her a compliment, because I wanted to find out a little bit more about her, because when she opened her mouth, everybody in the room would stiffen up, and that she had that kind of personality. She was really edgy. And so when I went up and talked to her, she was really edgy. But I asked her if she wanted to do something about that edginess so that she could use it in a positive way. And so she was open to that. And we went into a room, and I did, there's a technique in chiropractic called NET. And, and I was working with her and asking her questions and looking for where she buried some of the things that happened to her in her childhood. Intuitively, I knew that there was something bigger than how she was expressing herself, that wasn't, that it came from somewhere else. And I
Mm.
just liked her. So I just wanted to help her. So anyway, so we worked on that piece, and when we came out of the room that we were in, it's just like, because she went through a lot of like crying, emotional stuff, and like in realization. Because I think when you have that realization and you have an opportunity to put that in a place that's safe for you, then you can go on with the rest of your life without you sabotaging yourself and keep on hitting the wall. Why am I not successful? Why, it's just like, how come every time I get to this point, I have something major happen to me, And so it's like in asking those kind of questions. So when we finished, when she came up to me that night, because we had a big party, and she said, "Oh my God, you're my new best friend." And she said, "I've had pain in my back, in my neck, and in my lower back for 8 years straight."
Mm.
And she said, she goes, you didn't touch me, or anything else like this. I did some muscle testing kind of stuff where I touched her arm, but I didn't touch her back or anything like that. And she goes, "I have no pain. It's the first time in 8 years I have no pain." And it's just that emotional release. We don't realize how much we intake and bury someplace in us.
Mm.
My OBGYN in Boston was one of the top 3 OBGYNs in the whole East Coast at one point in time. And she had a friend of mine who I referred to her because I just really liked her. She was smart. She was very engaging. She was, when you came in, instead of saying, Elena, she would say, instead of saying, or like calling you by Miss, she would go, "Elena, I'm Dr. B. Come with
Yeah.
me." So at any rate, what she said to asked my friend, and my friend was just, she goes, I was gobsmacked. She asked me how come I hate my husband,
Mm.
and I go, what is she, she goes, because she had a health situation. And it just goes to show we bury our emotions. We wear our food on our face. We wear our emotions on our face. You can tell when someone's happy or not happy. You can tell if someone's sick or not. The face is a huge indicator, especially in Chinese medicine. But
Yeah.
there's tons of those examples, that we could look at.
Yeah. No, that's really, really interesting. And I think the emotional I think there's a book, it's called The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes,
And
there is.
it's all about that, if I understand. Yeah, it's very much like how our suppressed emotions or traumas and so on kind of really manifest into physical illness.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people, and it doesn't, and I think the misconception has to be this big trauma, and it doesn't have to be, right? It can be just a small thing that you experienced that was really impactful to you. It might not
Hmm.
be a huge trauma, relatively speaking, but to you, you've kind of internalized it and it's just holding on to that. So how do you know if that's that? Like how do again, like where does one start? Like what's
Well,
the, you know?
when you keep on doing the same thing over and over again and, and you're not getting better results, you've got to take a look at maybe there's something else going on here. You
Mm,
know, it's like, in, oh, I can't think of his name right now. He wrote a book called The Big Leap. In The Big Leap, he talks about, like hitting the ceiling, hitting the wall, and keep on sabotaging yourself. And you're going, well, why does that happen? If you know where it comes from, then you can put it, I always say, in a safe place so that you can move on. But it's just like it's doing the same thing, like Einstein says, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And a lot of times you can be going, well, just this time I'm going to try this one more time, and I'm or in order to do that. So I think, like when you speak to like, leaders, and you think about innovation and you think about influencers, and having, like that purpose of like, being in the forefront, and being able to elevate those boats, you have to make sure that you're a-okay, and what you might want to use as a bad word, I guess, like, I'm okay, I'm clean, I don't have like some of those things, but when they come up, and everyone has them. You said yourself, it's just like just a couple seconds ago, like it could be just a simple thing. You could hear your parents one time argue over money, and then go, oh my God, I'm here, I'm a burden to them,
mm-hmm,
you know, or or it's just like, or like, oh, my father doesn't have enough money, like, and he's well educated, then I'm never going to have enough money, so if you go in with that belief system, because our beliefs are strong. But
mm-hmm,
likewise, when you're committed to changing that, you can't have a transformation without commitment.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And so you have to just like, like, what is it? Let's take off the top of the iceberg. You don't want to go to the bottom of the iceberg. You want to like take the top of the iceberg off and kind of going, okay, so, and then put that in a safe place so that when, that big issue, whatever it is, or the mini issues that they are, they can be dealt with, in a really logical way. And so that somebody can get past that quicker within safer, and a simpler solution.
mm,
I love solving problems. To me, that puzzle um, is inspiring to me because I just think that we all have these stories and we don't know what our story really is. Sometimes we know what we say our story is, but sometimes we have a deeper story that even enriches our lives even more. And if you get rid of that, it's like you can make a change for anyone around you, and especially for people who you're going to foster moving forward. That's
mm-hmm.
just a really super wonderful gift to get. Cuts to the chase. You get just like, oh, I had this happen to me when I was like, X, Y, and Z. And so tell me about, your situation, and then listen in between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, the true story lies in between it, lies in a whisper. My grandmother used to say,
Yeah.
listen for the whispers. But that is I think that's something that, that and having clear thought, and being, in intentional in how we move forward is crucial to like being owning our own space, being able to sleep well at night, being able to eat well so that you can make better decisions. We all can do better. Even if you're doing great, you can always do better.
Yes, amen
Yep.
to that. There's also a lot of talk these days around infertility and just the struggle that people have having children, like young people. And, you have, so many stories of, 30-year-olds that are going for IVF because they're not able to reproduce on their own. And it seems to be all connected, even from the things that you're talking about, which is like all the environment and the food that we're exposed to. So have you worked with any clients that maybe struggle with that, or is that anything you focus on?
I haven't worked with somebody in a while, but I had a client, inpatient, um, years ago who, did everything to get pregnant. And we feng shuied her house, We went over
Mm.
and moved the bed, got everything underneath it, put it in the right direction,
Yeah.
and then, and I asked her about products she was using because you have to read ingredients. And there's a lot of ingredients in the products that we put on our skin. 65% of what we put on our skin gets absorbed in the body. So you want to make sure what you're putting on your skin, in your face, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is very high quality, and you understand the ingredients. You don't have to be able to pronounce it, but you have to understand what their side effects are. And so at any rate, I looked at her one day and I just said to her, I said, what kind of perfume do you use?
Mm.
And she said, and she told, I don't remember what it was, but she told me, and I said, get a list of the ingredients. So the next time she came in, she brought in a list of the ingredients. So two of the ingredients that were in that perfume were imologs. And
Mm.
imologs, you're like, wow, what the heck's that?
Yeah. I'm like, what is that?
Imolog, for medicinal purpose, herbal wise, they would give it to a woman whose period was late. Her menstruation cycle was off. So they
Mm.
would give the imolog to her to bring on her period.
Interesting.
And so that was two ingredients that was in her body lotion that she was putting all over her body. I said, you should throw this away. you know,
Yeah.
and I said, or if you want to keep it and see if this is the case, because her husband checked out okay and she checked out okay, they both had all the pieces of the puzzle, and so 3 months after she stopped using it, she got pregnant.
Mm. Interesting.
So you have to, I'm an out of the box thinker. So when I hear that, it made me even more aware, and it raised another radar signal for me to really start looking into more of what people were putting on their bodies and what people were putting on their skin. I always tell people, if you can't eat your cosmetics, if there's something dangerous in your cosmetics, you shouldn't put it on your skin.
Mm, that
And
makes sense.
and like in your body too, because you're feeding your skin. Your skin is the second largest organ in the body. The first are your blood vessels. And
Mm.
so, you don't want to create inflammation, when you're thinking like, my gosh, you look so beautiful, and you're thinking those things that you're putting on your skin might be accumulatory. So by the time that you're 40, you have bigger problems,
Mm.
and so um, it's imperative and to really, really take a look at, like your whole environment and not just one aspect of it. Like I want to eat better. So it's just like, and you go out and you choose foods that don't have specific ingredients in it, and being true to that, but you're drinking tap water. It's just like it's incongruent. It can't just be one piece. And there's so many like plastics like in water, that interfere with how people can lose weight or or have problems, because they get stored in those fat cells,
Yeah.
and they don't want to give it. That's something that they just don't want to give out. And also, I just recently saw a label that had um, an ingredient on it called sodium benzoate, on a natural ingredient. And I wrote them a message and said, how can you claim that you have all natural ingredients, you know, in your product when you say that you have sodium benzoate in it? Because sodium benzoate is a man-made product. It
Mm.
doesn't occur naturally. And and they had vitamin C in the same ingredient in the same product. So vitamin C and sodium benzoate, and I don't know what the portion has to be, but I'm looking at if it's there, it's there. That vitamin C and sodium benzoate create a thing called the benzene ring. Benzene rings are directly related in with exposure to carcinogens.
Mm.
They're cancer producing, and so so I like, for your listenership, if they should go check their labels on the products that, especially if they're using, if anything has sodium benzoate, it's not natural,
Yeah.
and especially if it's paired with an ingredient in the list of like vitamin C, it's easy, it's an easy Google search,
Mm.
whether you're ingesting it. They say primarily they talk about the ingestion part of it, but I'm talking about like whatever you put on your skin. If you absorb
Right.
65% of it, you got to pay attention to that also. And
Yeah.
that, so there's that piece of that you speak to, and I just think that like you see a trend right now of something that I've been talking about for 25 years, of happening, and people being much more aware of their health and demanding much more cleaner food,
Mm.
and understanding that, our government here in the United States has not been, didn't have our best interest at heart for many
Yeah.
things. I mean, even, and then when they don't, so the ingredient can still exist, they change the name of the ingredient. So you, the consumer, looks at it and goes like, oh, like, oh, aspartame's no longer in here, but it has a new name.
Yeah.
So that there's a lot of, I think, underhandedness in how, the transparency that we see or don't see in our foods and how we get to eat them. But if you can
Mm.
control what you put in your mouth,
Yeah.
then you also can control, a lot of, can improve a lot of your outcomes that you have.
Mm. What would a detox look like? If somebody's listening, like what's a simple thing they can do or start, or like a simple detox?
Well, first off, they need to, for a simple detox, um, I would tell people that they first need to go in their closet of in their pantry and look at the ingredients that are on anything that they have in their pantry and throw out anything that they don't understand what the verbiage is.
Yeah.
Right? That'd be one thing.
Mm.
Um, one way to do like a simple like detox is like, making sure that you're eating whole foods, that are organic based. Also know that when you're eating the if you're eating things like oh, I just lost my train of thought for a second. For like, detox, you want to make sure you're drinking a lot of water,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of water from a good source, so you're drinking 50% of your body weight in ounces, as a base. You can put lemon in it to flavor it. Drink it from a straw from a BPA free bottle. And so that because it's easier to get the amount that your body needs to hydrate, because every organ in bone tissue needs water in order to, you need water for sleep, you need to be hydrated enough to sleep well. um, and then, I would tell people to avoid fruits, and the reason to avoid fruits is because fruits aren't, they go to your stomach, but they're not processed as until they get to the liver, and the liver already has bigger jobs doing that. So if you're trying to detox and get things out, and there's programs that, have detoxification. So if anything refers to purging, you don't want to purge your liver, you want to tonify it, you want to make it work better. I use a product from a company that I like just for that reason. And I also want to be able to get rid of heavy metals,
Mm.
you know, but there is also another product for detoxification that's made from a company that's based out of Cleveland, Ohio, that is called Clear Drops. And Clear Drops is something you would take as a supplement, that's above and beyond your like your natural diet. Like it's something to like you can add in there. In that particular product has 3 patents, in 36 countries.
Mm.
And so it's has a lot of validity, and it has a lot of white paper behind its process. Um, for like every day, it's just like, go back to doing something like eating, um, see what kind of results you have, first, because I always think food is medicine, from doing a Mediterranean diet, but staying away from breads, pastas, rice,
Mm-hmm.
eat vegetables and eat like lean proteins, eggs are okay, use high quality olive oil that are high in polyphenols so that you can get the most antioxidant, you know, um, olive oil that you can use, and you never ever ever cook with olive oil on high heat ever.
Mm.
And then watch the pans that you cook in. A lot of them leach, chlorotetrahydrocarbons, which are like if you have like Teflon type pans,
Yeah.
or nonstick pans. A lot of those have coatings in them that when they are in high heat, they leach that ingredient into the foods that are
Mm.
being cooked in it. So eating like fresh, you know, like lean, like having lean meats, fish over chicken over red meat, um, that type of thing. And then, green leafy salads, the more greens, the better.
Mm.
And organic over, traditional store bought
Mm.
broccoli, in the such, and stay out of like one group too much too. It's like a lot of people have a tendency to eat tons of broccoli. I have a woman in Sullivan, she's at 5 days a week. I said, and she's having difficult time losing weight. Well, cruciferous vegetables affect the function of the thyroid, and thyroid is a secondary burner it's a backup organ, I always learned in alternative medicine, to the heart. And so, I said to her, you need to get, that thyroid revved up again because it's sluggish, and so if you eat a lot of cruciferous vegetables, then it has a tendency to slow down your metabolism. Um, and also things like kale and spinach should be blanched before you eat them, so
Mm,
that because the high level of oxalates in them can affect, the kidney, and it's just difficult to digest. And then
mm,
so having them slightly like blanched before you even put them in a smoothie, just because they're small doesn't mean they don't have that property, if they're chopped up.
mm,
So that kind of thing. There's other products that are on the market that promise detoxification. But like when you're doing that, you really need to really up your game about what kind of foods that you want to choose. So in a 10-day detox that I help people with, there's very specific diet that goes along with the 10 days, and very specific supplementations that help support how your liver detoxes and improves that level of it, and it makes your liver happy as opposed to somebody punching it,
mm,
which would be purging it, and then so that you have a better result,
mm,
so, and then before, they should be evaluated whether or not they're a candidate to do a detox. So you have to have a healthy stomach in order for those toxins to go someplace, so they end up in the toilet. And
mm,
so a lot of times in the two science-based assessments that I offer, one is just to test for like what's going on with the gut, like, what you're happy, like, on a questionnaire type thing, do you have issues with your gut? Well, you will know if you do by taking this science-based
mm,
piece. And then the detox portion of it, that assessment tells me whether or not somebody's a candidate and how well they're handling toxins in their environment. So if their score is on a high level, if they're not under 10, then I would recommend for someone to do a 10, like, this 10-day detox piece. I never recommend for someone to do it for 28 days. And I've never done that. It never made sense to me, because I think that, you want to tonify the body. You don't want the body to be stressed out for a long period of time in order to do that. And so
mm,
I usually I do them in blocks of 10 as opposed to doing any type of 28-day type thing.
mm.
And people get bored after 2 weeks, you're ready to do something else,
Yeah.
and so you can still achieve great results. I've had people where I've only just used, didn't use any supplementation, and I just use what I basically described as the food that we just talked about,
Mm.
in order to get results. But you don't know where you're at unless you actually take an assessment.
Yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
to know where you're starting at.
Yeah. There's lots of information you just shared. So I know you also run programs around that. And I'm sure people who are listening just like me that are like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to go on her website and learn about this. And it's brilliant. But as we kind of wrap up this conversation, if somebody is thinking that, where do they go to find more information? Because I think it's I mean, we should spend hours just on each topic that you've mentioned. It's magnificent how much information you have. Where can people go to like learn more, maybe to get in touch with you if something you mentioned, maybe,
Well,
triggered a thought and
one thing is my website is called healthteamnetwork.com, and there's numerous ways to communicate with me on Health Team Network. I have a lot of podcasts that I've done, which is on my media sheet. I have products that I support. I need to update the clear drops that I talked about that here. So people can't find it on there. They can reach out to me from there. There's numerous ways that they can hit a button, and get in touch with me. And then what I would offer your listenership is the ability to have those two health assessments, which I call the MDQ and the HQ gut, those two assessments complementary, so they can see exactly where they're at.
Mm,
and so you can do that easily by if you go on that piece, on my website and send to me, with put your name, Elena's name, and then, I'd like to get those 2 health assessments that you talked about, because what they do is after they take them, they have a complimentary half hour with me to go over those results, and so they take them, they get their results, and then they can see, where they're at, and
mm,
and or talk with me about some strategies. There's no charge for it. Some strategies in order to do that, and there would only be a charge going forward if we decided to work together.
yeah.
Um, so that's one way. Another way is if we met each other on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great platform, for to be able to connect with that also. And I have a significant profile. Same thing, direct message me on LinkedIn, to say, hey, I saw you on, Elena's podcast. And I just like I want to stay healthy. Can I take,
Mm,
can you offer me those 2 assessments that you spoke to, and then I'll be more than happy to, send those out.
mm,
And then also if people, lastly, if people are looking at how fast they're aging, it's just like the one of the besides, the like what people think like this, I have too much sun, I'm using sunscreen that's poison and toxic, and I've got, I don't have the best diet, it could be better, and blah blah blah. What's going on in your intestinal tract is probably, the biggest culprit of, that process. And then in combination with everything, it just makes it into a big soup. So I
mm,
teach exercises for the face, and also for nutrition that supports somebody being healthier, so that they can always keep, if they're a business professional, or if they're just a mom, dad, and want to do better, they can keep that competitive edge in any industry that they're in by doing
mm.
just simple, like very very simple exercises, and also nutrition to support that.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll make sure to share all of that in the show notes as well. And last question I ask all of my guests is what is one question you wish people would ask themselves more often?
Well, couple things come to mind, but I think people should ask themselves if I can do better,
Mm,
you know, and if the answer is yes, then do it. Make it a priority, make it, a commitment. And because if people are looking for a transformation, just remember you can't have a transformation without commitment. And so if you want to lose weight, if not sleeping well, if you're like, I don't know what to eat, I mean, when I'm eating, it's just like I'm always bloated, and you know and then I'm tired, all the
mm,
time, I have no energy, then it's like, ask yourself, like, why is it, you know that I'm feeling like that, and what is it that I can do about it? Can I do better? And if the answer is yes, then do better.
mm. I like that.
And then, then end that with, like, why is it that I have an opportunity now to do something about it? And what action step am I going to take
Mm, I like
to do
that.
that?
Dr. Pat, thank you so much. It was definitely educational, insightful, and makes me want to go even deeper into my own health journey. And I'm sure people who are listening feel the same way. So, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll have a part two and maybe even a part three at some point because you have so much information. I would love to dive deeper, but I'm also respectful of your time. And
Mhm.
so we'll wrap it up here. But I would love to have you back for a second part to go deeper into some of these things that you talked about.
Thank you. I would love it. It's just like I love spending. Just really I feel the synergy. And I could feel and I love to see people do well. That's like one of my motivators, is to see people, do their best, and sometimes they just need to have that little push. Sometimes they need
Yeah.
to have a big push, but we start with a little push first, and
Yes,
then you can wear the high heels.
absolutely.
And
Thank you, Dr. Pat.
thanks, I appreciate it.